Good Saturday morning, Luke chapter 10. One day an expert in religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question, "Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus replied, "What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?" The man answered, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "Right," Jesus told him. "Do this and you will live." The man wanted to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, "Well, who's my neighbor?" This man gave a perfect answer to Jesus' question, but this man had no intention of honoring Jesus. He was testing Jesus with what he thought was a difficult question on how to obtain salvation. Jesus was probably teaching in some house or courtyard, and the man stood up to draw attention to himself, maybe to allow his appearance to give emphasis to his question and its answer. Scripture clearly points out the man's motive. He sought to justify himself. When people today question a clear principle of Scripture, as this man did, their motives are the same. When we seek to justify ourselves, we limit what we can receive. Self-justification can blind our vision, hinder our perception, and warp our understanding. 1 John 4:20 speaks to this self-justification. If someone says, "I love God," but hates his fellow believer, that person is a liar. For if we don't love people we can see, how can we love God whom we cannot see? If this scripture were understood and applied, a whole bunch of social injustice would be solved. Anyone who reads this verse honestly will realize there's no place for racism, objectification of women, or the abuse of children in God's kingdom. Yet these problems persist. Self-justification. I love Jesus' assertive response to this man. "Right," Jesus told him, "do this and you will live." The man had asked his question to test Jesus. To him, see, God's law was simply a matter of speculation and debate. So when Jesus used this word, "do this," it probably came as a shock to the man. The man had hoped by his question to expose Jesus as a fraud, but Jesus had exposed the man as someone who just likes to argue about spiritual truths. He may have actually enjoyed hearing Jesus talk, but the idea of doing anything with the information he heard, that was never his intention. Desiring to justify himself, the man says to Jesus, "Well, who's my neighbor?" He thought he could justify his conduct if permitted to define the word neighbor. He asked this question hoping to find a loophole of security and maintain his public standing and possibly quiet his own guilty conscience. He was probably expecting the Lord to tell him that his fellow Jews were his neighbor. Instead, the Lord tells him that he ought to be a neighbor to any and every man in need. Maybe that's a question we need to ask. Who is my neighbor? Jesus goes on to tell the story of the Good Samaritan and his compassion, and it challenges each of us to consider how we treat our neighbors. Love your neighbor. Loving our neighbor is not difficult if we get to define neighbor. See, we define neighbor as those who like us and those who like us back, people we're comfortable around. Furthermore, we tend to define love cheaply. Liking a Facebook post with a heart emoji, that's pretty shallow love. Jesus calls us to inconvenient love. That's love that pushes us out of our comfort zone, love that asks more of us than a keystroke on a computer. What did loving one's neighbor look like to Jesus? Well, for Jesus, real love means crossing boundaries. We all like people who like us, but in this parable, it is the hated Samaritan who crosses the boundary. Who might be across the boundary in your life? The addict, the homeless, the person from another race, or the annoying neighbor who needs Jesus, the mentally handicapped person who needs a helping hand, or maybe the person who works for you. See, the high cost of real love means crossing boundaries. For Jesus, real love means emotional investment. The parable tells us that the Samaritan took pity on the man. He was moved emotionally. With the information overload that we have today, we see so many needs around us that we tend to grow numb to it. We start to ignore needs. The high cost of real love means being emotionally invested. The Samaritan went to him, picked him up, cleaned his wounds, not because he was a nurse or professionally trained. He simply cared. For Jesus, real love, it's going to include money. What the Samaritan does for this man is substantial financially. Real love also includes time. The Samaritan's help took a long time. I mean, I get it. Our time is valuable. Most of us are busy. Many of us would be quicker to just give the money, but not our time. But real love, it requires an investment of time. One final thought. The Good Samaritan story is just that. It's fiction. But Jesus' encounter with the man asking the question about eternal life, that actually happened. The man concludes accurately the two greatest commandments, and Jesus praises him for his answer and says, following those commandments will lead to life. Too often, we focus our faith on me and God and presume that my relationships with those around me are separate. Here, Jesus makes it painfully clear just how important those horizontal relationships are. We must ask ourselves as followers of Christ, am I willing to love my neighbor? It's time for me to make breakfast. If you haven't eaten yet, swing by the church this morning. I'd love to share what I have.